Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Lecture Notes. So today I'll be explaining Make Flecknoe, which is written by John Dryden. In video part 1 and part 2, I've already explained about the author, basic background of this poem, how Shadwell and Dryden wrote mock satiric poem on each other, basically lampoon on each other. And in this particular video I'll be explaining from line 95 onwards. So let's have a little bit of recap that earlier before 95 line, Dryden wrote that Flecknoe, the king Flecknoe, is trying to find a suitable person for the kingdom and a suitable king for his kingdom because he wants to retire, and he chooses Meg Flecknoe because he is supreme of stupidity and he doesn't have any relation with wit, neither a ray of hope or light or any idea, anything productive never enters his mind. So he's the right person to become the kingdom of stupidity, that he's the right person who can acquire this throne. So from line 95 onwards, the coronation process start. The coronation process is where on that particular day he becomes, that is the Macflecknoe becomes the king of that place. So, starting from the line, roused by report of fame, the nations met from near Burnhill and distant Waltering Heights. So, the coronation process has been started. Dryden starts with mock heroic touch that Shadwell, the new emperor fame, has spread from a low key street where no one crosses to far-fetched forest where not a single human resides. So he's telling that when a king acquires a place, is so his name travels to far off places. His majesty, his reputation travels to far off places, and here also Shadwell's, that is McFlecknoe name, will be traveling to many places. One of the place that he mentioned is Bun Hill and distinct Walting Street. Dun Hill is a place that is totally secluded forest, and Walting Street is a low-key street where nobody enters, not a single person passes through that area. So clearly demeaning his reputation that nobody will know him, though mighty kings are named in history also and the people know throughout the world. But here, Mick Fleckner will be such a person, making a fun out of him, that he'll be such a person that not a single person will know him, least bothered about remembering him. So both these places are less than a mile apart also. So mocking that not a single person knew him as a writer, poet, or king. No Persian carpet spread the imperialist way. Usually, when a king is crowned, many imposing and luxurious things are shown, like the red carpet or the royal carpet is there. But in case of when Macflecknoe is crowned on that particular day, there is no Persian carpet, but scattered limbs of mangled poet lay. So Dryden further states that instead of Persian expensive carpets, there lay heaps of pages of book written by neglected authors. From dusty shops, neglected authors came, martyr of pies and relics of the balm. So he says that mangled poet whose reputations was not good either because of allegation of plagiarism or the work wasn't good enough. Only those authors came at the time of coronation, that not a single reputed or a nice person was present on Macflecknoe's auspicious day. So he tells that Dryden tells that earlier, at the time of scarcity, paper from books would often be repurposed for other needs. One of the use was using that paper as a toilet paper. So using the humor, Dryden says Shadwell writing is best used for toiletries because it is so bad that nobody wants to read, and he's so unfamous that his book pages is best used to relish of the bum. Much Haywood, Shirley, Ogleby there lay, but loads of Shadwell almost choked the way. So Haywood Shirley or Gleavy, earlier also he's mentioned those poets, and he has writers and poets, and he says that they are the mediocre poets who had not achieved any name and fame. But Shadwell is the worst of all because his name will be so much prominent in the worst writers that nobody else could win that race of the worst one. So Haywood, Shirley, etc. were mediocre writers, but Shadwell choked their way as he was the worst of all. Blickard stationaries for humans stood prepared, and Herringman was captain of the guard. Blickard stationery refers to the publishers and writers used to extend financial credit and had to face major losses. Harrington was Shadwell publisher who faced so much loss that he was guard of coronation. So he says that one of the person who supported Shadwell at the time of publishing was Herringman, and as a result that his books were did so much worse that Harrison faced so much loss that he accepted the position of a guard at the time of coronation. That whosoever supported Shadwell in his writings did not make any profit, did not attain any name, because he was a person who was already facing loss because of his works. The Horary prince in majesty appeared, high on throne of his own laboured rear. Own labour here refers to the high pedestal to reach seat was built from heap of his own books, highlighting that his books were not meant for reading, but can only be used as temporary objects. In the last paragraph, he Dryden mentioned that it is only good for toiletry things, and now he is again mentioning that his books are not meant to read but only to serve the purpose of non-living objects or non-existing objects which doesn't have any importance. At this right hand, our young and as Canisius sat, Rome's other hope and pillar of the state. So Canisius was also inherited the throne and kingdom from his father. The reference here is to Rome reinforces the mock epic tone. The speaker ironically linking Shadwell's situation to that of the classical heroes of old. So being it is a mock epic, so uh, here he is comparing to one of the ascendant who also acquired throne from his father, but he was totally opposite of him because he achieved and led to the prosperous and growth of his kingdom, while Shadwell or Flecknoe was not responsible for his own growth. So how could he be someone who will be give prosperity and give a good name to the kingdom? His brows thick fogs, instead of glories, grace, and lambent dullness played around his face. Usually, when a king is coronated, he is full of happiness and gratitude. But on the other hand, Shadwell was seen as someone who had brows thick fogs instead of glories, grace, had dullness. That his thick fogs has been referred to his forehead, which as indicative of mental confusion rather than intellectual brightness. So on this day, he had to show his intellectual side, but on the other hand, he was showing a mental confusion on his face. As Hannibal did to the altars come, sworn by his sire to mortal foe to Rome, so Shadwell swore, nor should his woe be vain, that he till death true dullness would maintain. So usually after the coronation, the king takes the pledge that he will do everything for his kingdom and whatever he wants. But here Shadwell takes the pledge that he will make sure that dullness resides in his kingdom, and he will do this till he dies. That he swore till death that dullness will never leave his mind as well as kingdom. The reference to Hannibal here is Hannibal was a general from Carthage who warned against Rome. As commanded by his father, he swore to combat Rome as long as he lived. His coronation seemed to be forced upon him, like duties were imposed. Thus, Chadwell swore to wage war against wit and sense till his last breath. He pledged to have no relation with wit and sense. So, again comparing him to one of the prince or the king of the Rome, that he also was a king who was forced by his father. He didn't want to take the duties, but he was forced by his father. And Shadwell appeared to be the same, but still he pledged that dullness will never leave the kingdom. As in his father right and realm's defense, neither to have peace with wit, nor truce with sense, that he will never truce with sense, that he will never agree with senses, that he will never have a friendship with senses. The king himself, the sacred unction made, as king by office and as priest by trade. So he showed that he'll be the appropriate king for the kingdom of stupidity, and he will share no relation with senses or wit or with any humor. Moving on to the further lines. In his sinister hand, instead of ball, he placed a mighty mug of potent ale. So at his coronation, the King of England would be presented with a scepter and orb as a symbol of power. In this case, instead of an orb or ball, the new king is presented with booze, implying the dim-witted dullness of the new monarch. That he is not suited with something that has the suited with something which shows that he has power. He is the person who is best suited with the things that highlight his stupidity. That is booze. Love kingdom to his right, he did convey at once his capture and his rule of sway, whose righteous lore the prince had practiced young, and from whose loins recorded Psyche sprung. So Dryden ironically says that Shadwell's head was sanctified with poppies. He was nodding because his head was drowsy because of poppies, therefore making fun of his addiction. It is also said that Shadwell died of opium addiction. That nodding seemed to be concentrate his head just at the point of time it fame not lie. On his left hand 12 preserved owls and fly. So according to Roman myth, Romulus, the legendary founder of Rome, was visited by 12 vultures who told him where to establish the city. Dryden mockingly juxtaposed this with classical epics like here the owl wasn't a good omen but stupidity disguised as wisdom or a good luck. So this is at the time of coronation, that in this paragraph he particularly tells that after being crowned, after being the king, he is only sitting and drinking and nodding his head. He is not telling that what he will do for the kingdom. He made a single statement of pledge, and then he is only enjoying his drink. So Romulus 'twas swung by Tiber's brook, presage of sway from twice six vultures took, that admiring throng loud acclamations make, and omens of his future empire take. So a lot of people made loud noises and clapped when Flecknoe sat on throne. So again, Dryden uses here the reference to the six vultures. Here again, Dryden uses a legendary epic style in his mock epic way, that 12 owls passed when he sat on the throne, usually flying of a bird or an flying over flying of a bird over something is seen as a positive thing. Like you have heard the poem The Asian Mariner by St. Coleridge, where the flying of albatross was seen as a positive omen. So in the last paragraph, the owl was going, and here the six vultures are going. So clearly, it was seen as a very good omen. But though it is a mock way, so he says that while the vultures were going, it was seen as a positive omen. Usually, any bird is seen as a positive omen. Full on their filial dullness, long he stood, repelling from his breast the raging god, at length burst out in his prophetic mood. So her breast again robbing him of his manliness. Her Dryden is implying that he is a big woman and not the right person to be chosen as king. Raging god here implies that God himself could not understand and was angry, that how could he create a person like Flecknoe, at length burst out in his prophetic mood. At length, giving a long monotonous speech. Finally he stood up after all the drinking. He finally stood up, which only showed his anxiety and uncertainty of his kingdom's future. That when he started giving the speech, the audience, all the people that were present to listen to his speech, felt that it was monotonous, and prophetic here means that it was uncertain that what he was planning to do and what he was talking, that there was no sense in what he was saying and what he was planning. Heavens bless my son from Ireland, let him reign to far Barbados on the western man. So finally it is the father that here these lines are not spoken by Flecknoe. It is spoken by Flecknoe that the king, the old former king, has stood up and now he is giving a speech because Flecknoe is still drowsy from his poppies, that he is not giving the speech. His father is giving the speech. That is Flecknoe. So he says, Heavens blessed my son from Ireland, let him reign to far Barbados on the western main. So, irrespective to England, Ireland was seen as barbaric. The idea that McFlecknoe can only become famous in remote and uncivilized area where his dullness will be seen as brilliance. Secondly, the kingdom apparently stretches all the way from Ireland to Barbados. He says that the kingdom is from Ireland to Barbados, does impress, which seems impressive until you realize that that he is referring to the vast but empty Atlantic Ocean. Earlier also he told the distance which only was half a mile thing, and here it is only Atlantic Ocean, that he is only capable of residing on non-living things, that he is not able to rule the humans, highlighting this fact. On the domains may no end be known, and greater than his father be his throne. Beyond love's kingdom, let him stretch his pen. Let him stretch his pen, referring that let him write whatever he wants to, no matter how much worst he write. But please let him write whatever he thinks. He paused, and all the people cried, Amen. Then thus continued he, my son advances still in new impudence, new ignorance. So Flecknoe's speech in a nutshell, he says, let my son increase in blind ignorance as his rule proceeds, producing more and more terrible works. That I know he is an ignorant man, that he doesn't know, he doesn't acknowledge the critics and he doesn't work upon himself. He will write continuously whatever in his mind, whether it is he's mocking his head. Dryden is also mocking his the idea of repetition, that he does not acknowledge the critics, that what the other people think about his work. So he's an ignorant person. He's mocking right now at Mick Flecknoe, but always the indirectly mocking is done to Shadwell. So directly referring to McFlecknoe, but indirectly referring to Shadwell, he says that he's an ignorant person who doesn't accept critics, and as a result, he does the same mistake again and again. So Flecknoe, being the former king, did not speak for a long time. The idea that he too would be forgotten because he does not impact people in any way. So right now, Flecknoe has given the speech, that is the former king, the father of McFlecknoe, and McFlecknoe is still sitting in his opium addicted state. Success let other teach, learn though from me, pangs without birth and fruitless industry. So he says, like me, my son also knows how to undergo much labor and produce nothing, and to toil without achieving any result. So he says that we go through a lot of pain to write things, to do things, but still the result is fruitless. That we do not reach to the conclusion, or we do not reach as planned. Let virtuoso in 5 years be writ, yet no one thought accuses the toil of wit. So he says that Virtuoso is a work written by Shadwell, and in this play's prologue, Shadwell mentioned that he wrote this play in haste, but in reality, it took him 5 years, highlighting that he's so dull. And after all years of hard work, his work was all a waste because it did not have any wit or any sense or any idea that the audience could connect. Let gentle George in triumph thread the stage, and the dormant betray and love it rage. Let Cully Cookwood flopping charm the pit, and in their folly show the writer's wit. So George here has been referred to Sir George Etheridge, who was a comic, sorry, who was a comic playwright and contemporary of Shadwell and Dryden. Lovett, etc., are all characters from his play. His characters showed human emotions like which audience could connect to, while Shadwell wrote something which lacked wit, substance, and relativity. So, in this paragraph, Dryden is comparing George and George Etheridge and Shadwell. He's saying that George's work and his characters showed human emotions through which audience could connect, but Shadwell wrote such a work that nobody could connect, and there was no sense or a background or anything to connect with. Secondly, he says George Etheridge uh, portrayed many foolish characters, and George Etheridge's foolish character showed his wit, while Shadwell's foolish character showed his dullness and made him a fool and proved that his head was barren, where nothing productive idea will grow. So many authors at that point of time and contemporary period wrote few characters who were foolish characters, but they only made their work more relatable and realistic, while Shadwell's foolish character showed that he himself was a fool. So thank you for watching this part. In the next video I'll be explaining the rest of the poem, and do like and subscribe my channel.